Hey everybody, I'm Chris.
Hey, I'm Bill.
Have you ever asked yourself, what is your superpower?
Everyone has a superpower. Most people just don't know what it is.
We're going to help you uncover.
This podcast is all about helping people figure out what their truly unique superpower is.
Superpowers, what's yours?
Hello and welcome to another Superpowers podcast. You know, the incredible thing about this podcast is people don't just become entrepreneurs and become successful angel investors. They have a path. That path is guided by unique superpowers. We have an incredible guest again yet today that we're excited about.
I'm going to take it away. Bill, we're excited today.
We're excited.
We had a lot of interesting tidbits and learnings and insights before the show started. Some we will share, some we won't. But without further ado, we get to introduce my really good friend, Allie Wyatt. Thanks for coming to the Superpowers podcast show.
Thanks for having me.
Boom.
It's great to be here.
Yes. And
So-
go ahead, Bill.
So before we start, just what are you doing today? Right? What's your job today? Just, you know, so what I want to do is paint for our audience what you're doing today. Then we're going to back it up and say how you got there.
All right. I love it. Well, in addition to having a newborn,
Yes.
I have
Congrats.
a 2-month-old as of yesterday.
Amazing. Golf clap.
Which
golf
is
clap.
super exciting. But in addition to that, I am angel investing. I've invested in 14 female-founded companies.
Love it.
Funny enough.
Love
a
it.
couple male-founded companies, but those have actually gone out of business.
Yeah.
Oh,
We'll talk about
hey, we can talk about
that.
that. As Hannah
and-
smiles in the background.
And I'm an advisor to a couple of those companies pretty actively. And in addition to that, I am partnering with Rebecca Minkoff on helping her build out something called Female Founder Collective,
Yep.
which supports female founders to find resources and education.
Amazing.
Qualified guest, Bill, if I
Qualified.
have to say. You know,
We say-
if you say.
Chris and I say all the time, we thought we were reasonably successful
Yeah.
until we launched this podcast,
Yeah.
and then we were like, oh my God, we are such losers.
There's been a epidemic drinking problem at home because we do these and we're generally in a good mood, and then I go back and tell Jade, I'm like, I'm failing in life. We had 2 more guests today. It's going sideways.
That's why I've actually downed my podcast listening.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
Right.
Yeah.
you're like, wow, there are so many insanely amazing people. in
Yeah.
this
There
world.
really are. There really are.
How, Allie, when did you start thinking about supporting female entrepreneurs? Obviously, there's been a massive wave recently. You're one yourself. I can't wait to talk about Girlboss. But when did that start coming about?
Well, it's interesting because it sort of happened organically and accidentally. I was at Refinery 29. I was in a role of where I was head of revenue over there. And so I was working with a lot of different companies trying to figure out sort of ancillary revenue streams for the business. And as I was doing that, I discovered a lot of really interesting technologies. You know, had I known about yours, I would have probably tried to invest. And I actually proactively asked some of them, because since I saw so many and we were able to sort of test and see which ones actually worked,
Yeah.
I asked if I could invest in some of the ones that were coming through the door. And that's really sort of how my career in investing got started. I didn't even know if I was an accredited investor at that point or what that even meant.
You know when that sheet comes and
Yeah.
you have to fill out the box,
You're like,
and it's
"Ooh,
like
maybe
Yeah.
you
I'm
almost
not-"
need to have gone to MIT. There's 6 boxes, and you're like, you ask your attorney that
Yeah.
thing. Finally,
Yeah.
you get used to it. But yeah, what does that mean? What does an accredited investor mean? And it's funny, you
Yeah.
literally just said, "Hey, I like that. Can I do it?" Did you have any sort of intuition or instinct about what?
Did you have an investment thesis?
Zero. I wish I could
Yeah.
sound super smart and act like I did.
Yeah.
I've always had a knack for sort of knowing what was around the corner.
Yep.
Things that could work from either a technology perspective, but mostly in sort of consumer brands. And so something that I saw that was interesting that I thought could make a lot of money is that was basically my thesis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of angel investing. When I invest in the public market, I coined the phrase I invest at the 51-week low because when I invest, it goes lower. However, with private companies, I've actually had a great track record.
Yeah.
So people have asked me, what's your investment thesis? and I just say passion. Like
Yeah.
either you meet a founder where you're like, they are so passionate about the problem they're solving for, they're going to be the last person turning out the lights if it doesn't work, or it's a passion like based business.
Yeah.
And
I think piggybacking on that passion comment, had you, because you run companies, we've run, obviously we've all been sort of co-founder CEOs. I think you,
some more successful.
some have had higher peaks and valleys. That's true. However, you identify, I believe, I think you're able to kind of see through that founder a little bit quicker. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes in the first 5 to 7 minutes,
right,
the decision has already been made, and now I'm like, if I love it, now I have to just pretend for 40 minutes that I'm prying on questions.
But question for both of you: if that first 5 or 7 minutes you're like not feeling it, what do? Do you just cut it out? Do you just be like, hey?
So what's interesting is I took this angel investing course with First Round, and something they talked about was the chocolate souffle problem. What is that, you ask? And it's something that
what is the chocolate souffle?
We probably all do. Everybody in this room is operators who are also investors.
Yep.
And that's that I'd be sitting with this founder and I'd be projecting on her or him what I would do with those ingredients. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, this is going to be huge. This is going to be the most amazing company that ever existed.
So you start pitching
First, I would do this. Then I would do this, and then you bring this person in, and then you have $100 million company. You sell it to this company. And what you have to sort of pull yourself back from doing is, like, they might be planning to make a brownie.
Yeah.
But you're not really listening because in your head you've already created this $1 billion business.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to watch myself more on that because
Incredible.
I've noticed that a lot of the businesses that I do look at, I haven't really had that moment. I've had one business where in the first 5 minutes I was like,
Yeah.
This is definitely
How did this
not
get
gonna
on my
work.
calendar?
Exactly.
But
exactly.
it is interesting when you have all these type A's, and like people, someone's been working. This is like their life passion. After 5 minutes, you're telling them exactly what you need to do.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So it's hard to sort of weed out then, is this founder actually equipped? And this is what I've been trying to be more cognizant of in the process of doing diligence on these deals is this founder actually uniquely equipped to, do they have the passion, but also could they recruit the people? Are they self-aware? Self-aware is something that I think is probably the biggest thing I now look for in founders, in addition, like on top of the sort of table stakes of
course.
Persistent.
Social awareness, the street smart
like
component.
Social awareness and self-awareness that, hey, I'm not good at this and I'm going to need to hire somebody that is, I think is crucial.
All right,
that's where
so
I feel.
So you're running sales for a hotshot digital company. You're advising and investing in startups and female-led founders. That didn't just happen. Let's rewind the clock. Tell us about young Allie. Like, where did you grow up?
Yeah. So I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri.
All right.
I was the fourth child out of 5.
Mm.
I had 3 brothers,
Mm-hmm.
2 older brothers who they put me through serious boot camp as a kid. I'll put it that way. And a younger brother as well, but we had a big gap. So for a long time, I was the youngest, and we were all, the first 4 of us were all a year and a half apart.
Were you? What was your family like at that time? Were you a tomboy girl growing up? Were you sports?
Total tomboy. Total tomboy. It was like I was out playing soccer with my brothers. They would drive go-karts around. We had a big yard.
Yep.
We're in Missouri, and you can afford these like great big yards. So we had 9 acres. And we
That's
would
a big yard.
drive our go-karts
So
around.
much fun.
I wasn't able to drive yet when I was like 4. And so my brothers would take me around, and they would make a habit and like this lovely process of just fishtailing the go-karts into trees to try to throw me out. So
They love their little sister.
They loved me. They loved me.
But what are those 2 older brothers doing right now?
They're working for the family business, doing
wow.
different things.
Oh,
yeah.
now talk about that.
Yeah.
What's the family business?
So my dad was an entrepreneur, still is an entrepreneur, and he had a television station growing up. It was the #1 independent television station in the country for 10 years in a row.
Wow.
He did a lot of interesting things, actually developed technologies to create interactive TV. He also produced some shows. I don't know if you guys know Voltron.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
That was his show, and he did a couple others like Denver, The Last Dinosaur. So he was going out to LA all the time, New York all the time, and in the media business. And I never sort of thought that that was even interesting to me.
Yep.
But growing up in that world, it was super dynamic and super interesting.
And it's inspiring, I imagine,
yeah,
compared to
super
like your
inspiring.
friends' parents, not to take anything away from,
Yeah.
whatever they were doing, but like, yeah, my dad's flying to LA.
I
sure
mean,
you're
you guys,
you're
I
popular.
think you can appreciate this. We had Kelly Kapowski and AC Slater at our house for a party.
No, you did
Oh
not.
God.
Not AC Slater.
AC Slater.
That's so hot.
Unbelievable.
That's so hot.
And my sister came down in her headgear and, shook his hand and did the MC Hammer with him. But
Yes.
that was pretty awesome.
Wow.
So he exposed you indirectly to not only entrepreneurship, but sort of this lens of media and
Yeah.
creation. What was your dad's superpower? Was he a
Yeah.
producer? Did he just understand how to
He-
kind of light up an audience? What was the
Yeah, I think his superpower is really a content creator.
Mhm.
He knew he could think of things that were just so off the wall and that everybody would look at him and say, this is absolutely crazy and this is not a good idea.
Yep.
And then he would do it and it would work. Like
Mhm.
Voltron, like 5 lions coming together into a robot.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, what?
yeah?
But he was a really amazing storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And could sort of take these overriding themes and make them super relevant for a broad audience.
Did you see any breadcrumbs of that, like when you were growing up, as far as like reading you stories, or like, we are all parents, so I make up shit all the time. I can't really get away with it because the boys are
Yeah.
8 and 6, but like, I'd lie in a very good way.
Yeah.
But do you remember growing up for you or your siblings that could have been like a holiday or family gather and him telling stories?
He wouldn't necessarily. No, you know what? He would do a lot of larger than life things.
Mhm.
And so one example of that is my family we went out to Oregon, and we were all like, oh man, Oregon's so boring, this sucks, and we're all young. And he and his best friend took us to this field, and they're like, we have one of the greatest things of all time that's about to happen to you. And we all got these sweatshirts, and they said Tay Jack. And it was a combination of my dad's best friend's name. His name is Jack, and my dad's name is Ted.
Okay.
And we got these sweatshirts, we put them on, and they like drove out to this field. They're telling us this glossy story about this camp we're about to go to that's going to be like, no, it's so exclusive, it's only for us, but it's the most insane camp ever. And we get there, and it's just a field and them, and they're going to teach us soccer in that field.
Oh, that's so good.
But it's like
How old are you at this point?
I was like 7.
Yep.
My brothers still have the sweatshirt because it was such a pivotal moment where it was like we were psyched.
Can I? What's the name of the debacle movie where they brought everyone down to the islands? The fake party that never happened.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Firefest?
Yeah,
So
Firefest,
your
yeah.
dad basically was firefested you
Yeah.
before the
Yeah.
real Firefest happened on in the Bahamas.
Totally.
Except it was a positive experience.
Right. People liked it.
But it's like he's still doing that to this
Yeah.
day. Like at my wedding, for example, we're in the middle. It was in Italy. It was pretty magical, and we're on a cliff. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the wedding, he stands up and is like, I have to say something. And instead of doing a speech, there's like fireworks that light up and in concert with this Italian opera singer, and it's all in sync. It was like the most magical moment. He's like a creator of the most
Amazing.
magical.
So at this
moments.
This
point,
is
at
Dad's Superpower show.
by the way, Allie,
Remember Susan Ho?
I apologize, but
Your dad's here.
Hannah, our producer, can you please go get her phone?
Yeah. No, he's at the door.
He's,
he
he's
should.
a little bit cooler. Than me.
Yeah. Ted, come on in.
Yeah.
Come on in, Ted.
All right, so we have to do a Superpowers Dads. We had Susan Ho from Journey, whose show goes live on Monday, December 9th, I think it is. And she was talking about her dad from China, and Bill and I literally looked at each other. We're like, I think we gotta like optimize the show a little bit and get the dads on here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
extraordinary. So you have this obviously this gift, which is your family and your father
Yeah.
and all these sort of interesting insights. Where did you go when you left the Midwest? And this explains why you're so nice, by the way.
Aw.
I forgot about the St. Louis thing. Where'd you go,
Yeah.
and tell us about how your career got started?
So I went to the East Coast because I was like,
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Cornell.
Nice.
It was very cold. I did not like Ithaca. And because
But you met a husband there, I presume.
no,
Oh, so he's from
No.
Cornell, but you didn't know him in
no,
college.
he's not from Cornell. He
Oh.
went to Tulane.
He went to Tulane.
Yeah,
His roommate
it
that
just
didn't
so
make
happened,
it in Tulane went to Cornell.
Yes,
Wow.
he ended up at Cornell.
Interesting.
So I went to Cornell. Really did not like that weather, but a lot of my friends were coming down to New York,
Yeah.
and I would often escape to New York as like I just was a city rat sort of from the beginning. In fact, my first time to New York City was when I was 3, and I was like, "This is my place."
Yeah. So you had your sights on New York
Yeah.
from a young
It was
girl.
like
Yeah.
it was, sort of a foregone conclusion. So I ended up coming down here, and I actually went into fashion, just sort of as like to be expected. I was like,
Sure.
oh, what should I do in New York?
Yeah,
Fashion.
right?
And I had interned at Time Inc. for the general counsel. I thought maybe I wanted to do legal.
What was your major in college?
It was international relations and
Got it.
also textiles and apparel management. So it was like business for fashion, but then also, and I was like, maybe I want to go get a law degree and work in media, but specifically for law. And so I had an internship. Anyways, long story short, I'm in fashion. I hate it. It's soul sucking. And I'm walking down the street and run into my old boss, and we end up having like a career coaching session.
Wow.
And he's like, I think you would really like media. And I was like, no, like I grew up in media. I don't think it's for me. It's super interesting, but
Yep.
I don't, I want to do my own thing. And I ended up, long story short, at In Style magazine. And that was the start of my media career. And once I got into media, I was like, this is such a dynamic, amazing industry.
So-
It was a perfect fit.
Let me ask you a question. So you said your 2 older brothers are in the family biz.
Yeah.
You came out to the East Coast. Did you get pressured to go work in the family biz? Were you like
yeah.
were you the one that got away
Yeah.
in the family?
Yeah, my dad's like, "What? So when are you coming back to St. Louis?" And I
Right.
was like, "So if you want to move the business to New York,
We could have
we
a
can have a
conversation.
conversation." But
But
I was
then
like,
but
I
then
think-
you were like, "Hey Dad, I'm staying in New York and I'm going to be working in media."
right.
So
right.
which is like a double whammy.
Well, it was like I actually had said when I moved down here, I was like 3 years, and then I'm out,
Yeah.
and then it's just like I kept getting
I could've-
further and further sucked in,
Yeah.
and then I think it was like 2 years ago we looked at each other and we're like, "Yeah, you're never coming back to St. Louis."
Right.
When you got into
So-
the media world, Allie, was it predominantly from a commercial kind of lens, operator lens?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what year was that? Your first?
That was 2006 or
yeah.
2005.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, and then I ended up after the magazine world, I was like, I feel like this
Yeah.
print stuff is going away, and so I went into digital. And how did I get to Refinery? I actually went over to Elle magazine to run their digital side,
Nice.
and we kept like tripling revenue, and it wasn't necessarily widely understood how revenue relates to inventory. And I was like, we have no inventory. Our audience is not growing. What do we do?
Yeah.
And so I was looking to create a network, something super innovative.
Yeah.
And I was looking at all these properties and ran into Refinery 29.
Interesting.
And met those guys. And I was like, you know what?
This is better.
This actually they had a 250,000 person email list with like a 40% open rate.
Yep.
Right.
And they were part of the Glam network. And I was
Yeah,
like,
I
how about
remember
if
that,
I
yeah.
just
that thing.
come in and build your business with you? Because I think this could be insane.
Because that probably at that time there was probably like an 80 or 90%, like 80-20, 90-10 relationship as far as the amount of users and the value that they held, right?
I mean, they were doing significantly less than $1 million.
So your Refinery, when my first gig was a company called Music Vision back in 99, 2000. Our anchor Refinery was InSync.com. That's what held the network together. 2.2 million users. Back to you, Ellie. I just wanted to share that I sold inventory for it was just there.
Yeah. So that's
all right. So how long are you at Refinery?
I was at Refinery for about 5 years.
Okay, that was kind of like the real meaty opportunity.
Yeah, when I got there, we were little babies, all using the same phone.
Yeah.
And the same phone line.
Oh my God.
In a basement where like there were roaches the size of rats.
Yeah.
Crawling across the floor.
Yeah.
We had one AC unit. I'll never forget it because a couple days I was like, guys, I cannot come into work.
Is it colder than this room right now, or is it about the? Sorry.
It was like maybe like 120 degrees in there in the summer.
Yeah.
So it was the early days.
What did you learn during that time? Like, what was sort of the highlights of your experience? Whether it was the people or the industry was sort of booming. I mean, what were your kind of highlights that you?
So I feel like from a time perspective, it was just sort of that perfect time where it was like blogging was coming about, and it was right before iPhones, really hit it big, and so mobile wasn't as important. But I think the most important thing that I learned, and I didn't learn that when I was there, but really after, is how important people are, and what it takes to be a leader. Because Philip and Justin, who were the founders, and then Christine and Piera, they all really founded it together. But they were exceptional at finding talent, at weathering the storm. A lot of it is just resilience.
Yeah, resiliency.
And getting through it, and being able to problem solve and not crumble under the supreme pressure that is that process. But
were some of the headwinds at that time? I mean, there's always sort of capital and there's always sort of driving revenue, but I imagine a large part of that particular time was just the smartphone was coming, sort of the conversation was changing.
Yeah.
What at that time, do you think our audience would appreciate as far as the insights of, because a lot of people know Refinery, what was happening there that was just headwinds?
Well, it's interesting because I went there because at L, what was happening was we didn't have enough inventory, but a lot of brands had wanted us to sort of create their marketing programs for them.
Yeah.
So we couldn't do that at L because of church and state. And when I went to Refinery, I was like, here's an opportunity for us to start writing stories on behalf of brands. And that's really sort of what the business model became. And we became more and more sort of a marketing agency for brands than we were just a publishing
that couldn't tell their story. I want to shift into your when you got your entrepreneurial bug, and talk to us a little bit about your
just one thing that I apologize, but one thing that's just hitting me right now is if you think about the print industry, their hesitancy over legacy church and state issues, when this whole digital ecosystem redefined what church and state meant and what I mean, it's incredible to me that had they just taken more risks, they could have been, the digital, leaders with this incredibly strong base.
Versus, and I just met with Meredith last week. We know Troy at Hearst. Rather than those companies basically kind of reverse engineering and kind of having to be digital, they were on the forefront.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
And I'm not saying, like political, papers should do it, but like when it comes to like an Elle magazine. Church and state, really?
Right.
Like, come on now.
Right.
We're talking about fashion.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing where I was like, this is silly. I get New York Times.
Yeah.
100%. Drawing a hard line.
Yeah.
I need that for good journalism, but like this isn't.
Yep.
Life and death journalism.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. move on. Now you can move on.
So talk to us about how, your first entrepreneur. So you've been working for a great team.
Yep.
You've obviously been picking up, I imagine, all these incredible learnings and insights. And I don't want to jump ahead of anything, but if I have the timeline somewhat correct, there's a moment in time that you're like, I'm going to go start a business.
So what was interesting that I saw, after I got past the, oh my gosh, I'm going to leave because we don't have a printer here. At the time we needed printers, or like, there's nowhere to, we've no resources. I basically have to like go out and get my laptop myself, or everything was a DIY situation. What I found once I got over that culture shock of coming from a big company and having no resources was that there's an incredible power in, if you stick to something and you build it yourself, that there's a lot more money to be made.
Yep.
Maybe not in the short term,
Right.
but if,
I thought you were going down the self-fulfillment, but it was like money.
Yeah.
it's money and self-fulfillment.
Yeah.
I was
But
like,
from
I could never go back to a big company
Right.
again.
And just a salary job.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
So-
And you were talking about from like an owned and operated perspective, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so at, Refinery was now a well-oiled machine. There was
How many employees did they get up
about
to?
300 employees
Yeah,
at this
so- It's
a real
point.
company.
So Roaches in the basement to 300 employees. You were there
to
through it
2
all.
floors of corporate office
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
And to me, not knowing anybody in the bathroom or the hallways.
Right.
So I was like, I'm ready to sort of build again.
Yep.
That's what I love to do. And at the time, Goop was moving from London to Los Angeles. I was like, I don't really want to be like a celebrity's like blog
Just for our
agent.
audience, Goop is and started supported by who?
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah. Yep.
It was initially just a lifestyle newsletter that she wrote
Yeah.
out of her kitchen in London. She moved the business from London to Los Angeles when she moved, and she had a much grander vision for the company at that point. She wanted to create an integrated commerce company as well as really a company that would be on the leading edge of the clean movement, whether it's food or beauty or whatnot. And I talked to her about her vision and got super excited about what that could become. And at the time, it was just her and her. She had a new CEO on board. Her name was Lisa Gersh, who was sort of a media legend as well. And a woman named Elise Lonan, who is a brilliant editor, who really now is overseeing all content for them.
Yep.
Got super excited about that, and my husband got moved to Los Angeles, and so I got moved as well.
Oh, okay.
And started at Goop over there.
Right. And this was
This was the end of 2014.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was that experience like, and how was it? How much interaction did you have with Gwyneth? I got to ask.
So Gwyneth was awesome, just entirely involved. So it was Gwyneth, myself, Elise, and Lisa was over on the East Coast. But we were sitting in her guest house in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
And my most magical moment was being in her house. Well, 2 things. I'm in our first meeting together. We're really strategizing, and it was Gwyneth. Like, she was making all the decisions. It wasn't like she wasn't just a figurehead for the business.
Yeah. Right. She's in it. She's
very much in it. And we're having a meeting, and Barack Obama called her, and that was like, I could hear his voice on her cell phone.
Where you're like kind of restraining from like ripping her phone out of her hand.
It was pretty insane.
Barack, it's me. It's Allie. Hi, bye.
Literally.
It's actually very interesting because in the impeachment hearings, the ambassador to the EU got a phone call from Trump, and people were like, "You can't hear, hear."
Yeah.
But you're saying you heard
You
Barack
can-
Obama's
yeah.
voice, so there you have it.
Yes, you could definitely
That's
hear
great.
it.
That's really good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So
That's
now
a very
you're,
distinct
you're-
voice.
you went from St. Louis,
Yeah.
9 acres, and now you're hobnobbing with celebrities and
Yeah.
political.
Just celebrity queen all of a sudden.
Unbelievable.
Normal.
So that was pretty cool, but it had the same sort of feel of Refinery in the sense that it was still just a couple people. We're sitting there like writing stuff on napkins. We don't have resources at the moment. We're literally
By the way, it's still do it
working out of our house.
yourself. The only difference is no roaches, a nice, you know,
Can I ask you a
It was
guest
like,
house.
it's a very nice place
But-
to
but-
go
yeah.
But
and have a small office.
Yes.
Ellie, if
But-
you're listening, you listen to our show, I'd imagine someone's going to be like, can't Gwyneth write the check to put the resources around this organization and, pour millions of dollars? What's your response to that?
What I think was really impressive is that she wanted to do this right. She wanted to build an operating budget. She wanted to work the business according to that. She went out and got investment. And she made a real commitment to her role within that. So it was a true business. It didn't
Yeah.
feel like it was like some celebrity's side project.
Yeah. It wasn't really. It was a side hustle, but it was a very well orchestrated and
Yes.
invested in side hustle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But there's more. There's more post this experience.
Yes.
Yes. What happened after that?
So my husband got moved back to New York City.
What does your husband do?
My husband works in the financial services industry
Okay.
and hedge funds.
Mhm.
And so he got moved back here. And so I had moved back as well.
Yep.
Stayed for a couple months on. I just had my first child. It was really tough to sort of make that commute back and forth, but it was really, truly an in-person business because one was so involved. If
Yep.
you weren't, it would not have been. So she eventually moved the whole company to Los Angeles again
Okay.
because we got splintered and it was New York and LA.
Yeah.
But she moved everybody back. But I left, and that's when I actually started advising a number of different companies. I invested in the Wing, which I was like, okay, that was a very sort of right place, right time moment.
We have to talk about that one because it's obviously a great story.
Yeah.
And I imagine based on some of the earlier questions about meeting the founders and some of those attributes, and I got to assume that based on your prior experience, it positioned you well to sort of identify a winner.
Yeah.
Because you clearly had spent time with winners, even going as far back as your dad.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that
And what's the Wing?
the Wing is a third space. It's basically a club for women where they can go in and you can work from there, or there's incredible programming. They now have 16 locations around the world, and are probably going to be at 25 this year. I can't even keep up with the pace.
Wow.
But I sat down. It also was lucky because I was uniquely positioned to understand their problem. I was consulting without an office. And so, like, working out of Starbucks, getting kicked out, just trying to bide my time before I was kicked out of various cafes.
So it's a WeWork for women entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And
Not
without
just entrepreneurs. It's really anyone.
anyone. Got it.
I'm going to not use the W word. I'm going to
Well,
go.
it's without
I'm going to
the-
go convene. I'm going to go convene.
without
Higher
the
notch one.
without the $1 billion of losses.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
By the way,
Yes.
there is an art to side hustling your way outside of. There are other places outside Starbucks. You just got to know the great hotel lobbies.
Well,
Then
that
you
was
get-
the thing. I was
yeah.
like, W Hotel Lobby was
Yeah.
actually pretty great. They
Yeah.
had good, stable internet,
Yeah.
and I could find a quiet corner every
Yeah.
once in a while.
Yeah.
But then I would pick up at certain times. But it was like I was bouncing around like crazy.
But this is what I love about entrepreneurs is it's not like, oh, I was working out of my apartment. It's like, no, you have a baby. If you want to get something done,
Yeah,
you got to
gotta
go. And the hustle is like, I know this hotel, I know this Starbucks, I know
Yeah.
that. I actually have a friend who works from home.
You're like, I can get service from this bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
No,
For a
you got
phone
the
call?
Wi-Fi. But I have a friend who works from home, and what he used to do is get dressed, go on a subway, go one stop, go to the other side, go back, and go back to his place, just to get in the mind of like,
Oh, wow.
going to work somewhere. Now he's
That's cray.
yeah, it's a little cray-cray, but I love stuff like that.
Ritual.
We could talk about that, but I know all the sort of the 10 spots
Yeah.
and not getting kicked out or whatnot. Back to this being obviously a female community. What happens if Bill and I show up at the door at the Wing?
You're invited in.
We are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're definitely welcome.
Okay.
There's not a lot of guys that go in there.
Yep.
Right.
I think just because, like, if I were a guy, I would
Right.
be like, I don't feel
Yep.
entirely comfortable
Sure.
here.
Yeah.
But yeah, men are
Okay.
welcome.
Curious. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a highlight company. Any other ones that you're excited about that you want to talk about or not talk about?
I feel like all of them, but Somersault is another one.
They're like they end up like being like your children. Like you want to talk about them.
They do. I know. I'm like, oh, and then there's this one, and this founder's phenomenal. But Somersault is one that they've had just outsized growth, but it's actually a swimwear company.
Mm-hmm.
So when Victoria's Secret swim went away, which was like a woman's like one-stop shop for getting swimsuits. They came up with really affordable options that have a wide variety of sizes, but it's now also sort of morphing into a travel wear company as well, but it's direct to consumer. Their revenue growth has been insane, and they've actually had some offers. So,
and you and I had lunch, about a year ago. What's your spot on I thought this was an interesting kind of investment.
Lucky Lee's.
Anyone? Do you know Lucky Lee's?
Yeah, clean Chinese concept, or I should say, healthified Chinese.
Yeah. You said
American,
clean. It's recorded. It's
American Chinese.
Yeah.
And then there's I'm also invested in a company called Forward Space, which is a dance fitness concept, where it's sort of like the Soul Cycle, but instead for dance. And if you would go and take the class, it's transformative. It's about community. It's about making everybody feel body positive and good about themselves.
Similar to I think my profile, and I think Bill's as well. You are a generalist in the sense of, you're not gonna the sort of the restaurant versus the wing. I mean, there's some pattern recognition, but the reality of it is you obviously had a great experience meeting these founders, and you felt something emotionally.
But did you also proactively say, I'm going to look for female entrepreneurs and invest, or did it just start happening? And you're like, oh my God! Like now I've invested in my 12th, female-led.
Let me double down on this, or the market hears about that, right?
The latter, and it's really because women are, there are fewer women that are venture funded or that get equity funding. They started hearing about me because I was on other cap tables. So, it's like if you're on a cap table for an incredible founder, then they know other incredible founders, and they're also a great filter. So that's also, I think, the other reason why I haven't seen a lot where I've been like, ooh, definitely not, because I don't really take a lot of sort of cold emails. They're usually recommendations or referrals from other people that I think are exceptional. And already have that sort of vetting and diligence power. So it's actually most companies I want to invest in.
Right.
Okay, so just to recap a little bit here. You hated Cornell, came to New York, the little startup, Roaches down there, Refinery, big company.
Bill does this way better than I do.
Gwyneth Paltrow in L.A. Oh no, a hedge fund husband back to New York, had the baby. Gwyneth says, "Hey, I need everyone in my backyard," and it's there.
You miss Barack, Bill. You miss Barack.
I mean, obviously, obviously Barack. And now you're a mom.
Yep.
You meet a couple people, you start investing. So now what? So
also one of the reasons why I started investing, and this is actually how I ended up meeting Chris, is because as a woman, when I became a mom, I was like, oh, like you can't, you basically, for women, it's almost impossible to go back into a corporate environment and like live that same 9 to 5 because you have other sort of restrictions, physical as well as just emotional ones. So I felt like there was going to be this big surge of women starting businesses because more and more women are continuing to work through having children. And companies were going to have to adjust their policies, but they weren't going to do that as quickly as women were going to sort of make the choices
to start companies and be entrepreneurs.
Yeah, because there's so many talented women in the workforce, and they're, just because they can't maybe work a 9 to 5 doesn't mean that they're not just as exceptional and just as talented. And so they should go out and start their own business, and it'll probably be very successful. So that's sort of a thesis that in my head, I did start really believing in female entrepreneurs when I became a mom. And one of the other businesses was Hey Mama Co.,
Right.
Which Chris and I met through their founder. And I was super excited about that because it was a community for working moms.
Right.
Which all you need is other mothers when you become a mom for testimonials and reviews and resources
and to pull yourself up.
And to pull yourself up.
By the way, I think the mom groups across all social media are some of the strongest groups.
Yeah.
And it's
Most
and it's
engaged.
and it's kind of a world I'll my wife I'll be like, well, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm on this group about moms who are worried about their babies choking.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like,
You
that
can get
exists.
very specific.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, it's passionate. It's passionate.
Ellie, I do have to ask, for the audience and for women that I think would look at you and be like, shit, I want to have some of anything of Allie. No, I mean that. What is your advice or learning or recommendation as relates to specifically being a mom? And you have 3 now.
Yeah.
But yet you're still hustling.
Yeah.
You're still balling out. You found time to come here. I think you
Yeah.
were feeding your baby a couple of minutes before.
Yeah.
So what do you got to say? Like why are you able to do it? And what is your advice to other women that are going to look at you and be like, how did she do it?
So first of all, I feel like it's not spoken enough in terms of how people do it. Right, because everybody's like, I'm doing it. Like, I've got my own company and I've got 3 kids. And you're like, but how does that? What are the logistics? Because there's got to be a lot of logistics. In full transparency, I have a lot of help. I have a full-time nanny, and she comes in at 8 and she leaves at 7. And she is my everything. She's bringing the kids to school and she's picking them up.
Yep.
Some moms want to do that themselves, and some days I actually do. Right now I very much don't because of having my 3rd, but and then I also have a baby nurse for the baby who is 24/7.
Yep.
Right.
So I think it's really important to note those things because otherwise I would be chained to the house.
Yeah.
And the days that I am, I have to take a limited number of meetings, but I just am very sort of forthright with somebody on the phone. For example, I
Right.
work from home a lot right now. I have to because I'm feeding the baby. And, you'll
You're
hear...
like, you may hear something in the
I'm
background.
you hear the dog, you hear the door opening, you hear the baby, all these things. And I'm like, you're going to probably hear something in the background. I'm at home and I'm going to be working from home until XYZ date.
Do you feel? I kind of feel like it was almost unacceptable for people to work from home and have a baby on a conference call.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it's now accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's generally accepted.
Yeah.
Right. Even for not like the corporate jobs, but
Yeah.
if you're working at a startup or a mid-sized company,
Yeah.
Agreed.
I feel like now it's like, hey, you got to work from home. You work from home.
Yeah.
I think particular in this industry, so I work from home a couple of days during the week, and
Yeah.
my 8-year-old is sort of understands when the door's shut. My 6-year-old will, he'll still kind of come in, and I used to sort of
Test
freak
those
out
boundaries.
and kind of it's almost like when you're naturally being awkward, it doesn't matter how hard you try. Everyone knows dude, you're being weird. So now I'm just like, hey, what's up, Birdie? And he'll, and we're human.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like I agree, and I think there is it's okay.
Yeah.
I think that when my dog barks, it bugs me, but my kids don't bug me.
Yeah.
I love dogs, so I don't want to go on record and say I like dogs. Allie, did we talk about Girlboss?
We haven't yet.
No.
I want to make sure we cover that, and
Yeah.
before Bill does his incredibly thoughtful summary of your superpower, but Girlboss is such a important name, I think,
Yeah.
connected to you, synonymous with your name. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in the process of consulting, I was introduced by Elise, who's the chief content officer over at Goop. She was like, you have to meet Sophia. She actually helped Sophia on the Girlboss book, I think the 2nd book. And she's like, she's an extraordinary human, super authentic, and she's trying to figure out what to do with Girlboss, the brand.
What a great
because
name.
Yeah.
Great name.
Such a great name. Such a great name. And it had become a movement. It had become a hashtag where people were identifying as Girlboss. And so Sophia and I met, ironically, the same day that I was reviewing the branding with the founders of The Wing.
Wow.
And I didn't know they knew each other, but I was like, Sophia, meet me here, because that's where I was meeting Audrey and Lauren. And Sophia met me, and she's like, oh, I'm about to go to Audrey's wedding. And so it's a very tightly connected community. So Sophie and I were talking and trying to figure out, okay, what do you do with this? And she wanted to create a summit of some sort because she's like, I've gone to all these awesome summits that are for these amazing female leaders, and we go to, Fortune's Most Powerful Women, and it's a little bit of an echo chamber. And she's like, it's incredible, but it's all people who have access to this already. She's like, and it really needs this more is people who are just starting their careers and trying to figure out what the future could look like and should look like for them. And so she wanted to create a democratic conference for young women who were sort of figuring it out and in the midst of a transition. So you'd either be coming out of college or you could be a divorcee and you want to change careers. And so she wanted to create this event, and we started working on it, and there was so much momentum behind it that we just sort of were like, okay, let's do this full time, I guess, because it's becoming very real very quickly. And so we launched the business with the events really at the core initially. But really the notion of building a community was to come after that and the sort of underlying mission of the company.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Huge part of your story and one that's probably obviously continues to cement what you're doing now and allows you to do what you're doing now. So kind of in closing, anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, what about the Rebecca Minkoff?
Yeah. So I left Girlboss for a couple of reasons. One, because I was still in New York City and I was supposed to be in LA, and we were getting bigger and bigger.
Yep.
And the other thing is I got really passionate about my sort of investment career and also specifically working with female founders. And we were at Girlboss really focused on more young women coming out of college. And I saw Rebecca launch Female Founder Collective, but it was as a nonprofit to really be able to identify female-founded businesses with a seal and then be able to vote with your wallets. Ultimately, I came to her and I said, female founders actually need a place to share resources, and there's so little funding that goes towards them.
Yep.
Let's actually build a platform that's almost like a VC without having to get
raise money as needed and when, rather than funding.
But have all the same resources as a VC would give you.
Bill, I just want to go on record, and Allie knows this, because I adore her and just think she's so smart. I tried my best to recruit her for C2V, kind of partnership conversation. I did my best. I generally do pretty good with closing. Failed on this one. I support her all the way through, but I just want to. She gave me the husband.
Give you the hi ho.
We'll figure it out, Allie, one day. We'll figure it out.
We will.
We'll figure it out one day.
But here's the deal: is you can collaborate.
Yeah.
Right.
And we will. And we will. And
this
we will.
is not the end.
We will.
This is the
I love what
story.
you're doing. I know Bill loves what you're doing. What you're doing is so important and so ahead of its time. And it's some of these things are luck and timing, or some of them are instinct. It doesn't really matter, but you ended up at the perfect place at the perfect time, supporting a very important group of people, female founders that deserve that. So, love getting to know you at this level, Allie. Bill, let's do our best, because what's the show called, Bill?
It's Superpowers.
Superpowers. All right.
So I'm just going to think out loud here a little bit. So I am chairman of a company called Mediawala Founders, as woman-led founder. And the reason I became chairman is because I was advising her, and she just could not get funding. And then finally they said, well, what's Bill's involvement in the company? If it's more formal, maybe we'll think of it. So like a first-time entrepreneur, very, very difficult at finding. A first-time non-technical founder, very, very hard. First-time female, like the hardest, right? But then if you put all those together, first-time entrepreneur who's a female who's not technical, it's like, sorry, no funding. So it ends up, my chairman and I ended up being the investors. And so that gave me the appreciation, and also for her. So what strikes me is that you didn't have a mission right? You didn't have a mission to be this like female-led like advisor, investor, founder. You know, what you did was you created an ecosystem around you, right? And then that ecosystem is fluid, right? And it's fluid not where it's like the same people all the time. It's fluid in that it's kind of like I'm giving a visual of like an ocean where like sometimes like two things start together and one goes one way, one goes
poetic.
the other way. I am
beautiful.
I'm trying to wax poetic. And so, you know, and what also gets me is, you know, in that fluidity of this ecosystem that you created is all of a sudden you find yourself, you know, meeting Gwyneth Paltrow through that ecosystem. You know, it happens. Your husband gets a job in L.A. Gwyneth is starting in L.A. But then all of a sudden you like love, you know, it's like Barack Obama on the phone.
Yeah.
But husband's got to move back to New York. Not a problem for you. Most people, that is like, you got to be effing kidding me. Like, I am now working. I'm like 1 degree away from Barack Obama, and now you want me to move back to New York? Not a problem for you.
Yeah.
It's fluid. You're floating back to New York, and that ecosystem floats with you. So I don't.
It's a hard one.
I don't know how to put this into words, but I think what you've done is surrounded yourself and built relationships within this ecosystem that you have. I guarantee you have no idea what your next 5 years are going to be, but it's all going to be floating around this ecosystem.
Yeah.
And you're going to be this driving force helping now. And now I think you have purpose. Now I think you know, as a mother of 3, as someone who's entrepreneurial, who's done many entrepreneurial things, you've lived in their shoes.
Yeah.
And you know how hard it is. And you also realize, I know how hard it is with help, and a lot of help.
Yeah.
And a lot of these women-led, you know, founder companies don't have that help. They don't have that luxury. And so, like, you are the perfect person for that. So now, to say what the superpower is, I think it's creating this fluid ecosystem of just strong, powerful women that you're just locked in there. It doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
This ecosystem is going to follow you.
Oh, thanks.
My sort of summary of what I've heard is a combination of instinct. I agree with Bill in regards to the people piece. I think your superpower and gift is you have an incredibly good read on people. And I think your superpower is also, at some stage, I agree, there wasn't sort of an overarching mission when you were in Missouri, right?
Yeah.
But there, you did understand at some stage earlier than most that you had an opportunity to do what you're doing. So I think there's part combination of, and all this starts with people. If you can get a good read there, and that's where our conversation started. If you can't read people right, none of these things will happen. I really think your superpower is people. It's risk, and it's the instinct that you just knew that you had, whether you could explain it or not.
Before you took my very eloquent, you know, poetic thing and made it very tactical.
I just had to get down to brass tacks.
So I was going to end with the fact that I think you're a magnet within the ecosystem that you've created.
Oh, thank you.
And people get drawn to that magnet. And I, for one, you know, look forward to what happens the next, 5-10 years.
Yep.
So I will end with.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
From a 9-acre house in St. Louis, Missouri, to being a magnet within this ecosystem of strong women and aspiring women entrepreneurs. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's
Allie,
been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having us.
The
other way around.
You're welcome.
No. We are so happy that you were here. Thanks, Allie.
Thank you
and by the way, it's time for the next feeding.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Okay.
All right. There we go.
Thanks.
Superpowers.